Hi everybody, my name is Christina Mosier and today I will be talking with you about social stories. My two other group members, Amber Nelms and Olga Renasades, also helped me put together this presentation for today. So let's start off with talking about what are social stories. Well, Carol Gray developed them in the 1990s and she made them initially to help individuals on the autism spectrum with social situations. What social stories do is they describe the situations and the behavior that they should be performing with social cues and perspectives. They also tell the individual what responses are appropriate to use in that certain situation. So there are many different types of sentences used in social stories. The first one is descriptive sentences, and that's probably the most common used sentence in social stories. So those explain the questions like who will be there, why, where, and how the situation will occur. A great example of this is at school, go to the cafe. Then there's perspective sentences, and those enlighten the potential thinking of all individuals involved, and they are also very pertinent to the specific setting. So example of this would be, many students like to eat their lunch with others. Then there is directive sentences, and those pinpoint the right behaviors for the child to use in that particular setting. It also urges them to use those behaviors when they're put in that situation. So they tell the child what the correct behavior is to use and tell them to use that behavior. An example of this is, when I eat, I will touch my food. Then we have control divide sentences, and those sentences are cues that the child finds helpful in a certain setting. So they're just telling an individual to look for certain cues to know that they're in that situation where they need to use that behavior. Then there are affirmative emphasizes sentences, and those emphasize the important rules that need to be remembered while they're in that situation. Cooperative sentences are formulated so that the child can know how others can assist them in that setting. And then sometimes there are also partial fill-in-the-blank sentences, and those encourage anonymous discerning when facing a certain situation. They're not always used, but when they're used, they're a great way to see how the individual is understanding the social story. So let's talk a little bit about the research background. Well, Carol Gray, who we discussed before, had invented and created social stories, along with Joy Nichols, first published her study on social stories in 1993, and that study focused specifically on autistic behavior. Overall, there are actually limited studies on individual social stories in practice. However, it is still an evidence-based practice. And one of the reasons behind this is because usually social stories are used with another intervention. They're not usually used alone. So when they're testing, it's hard to say, well, which one helped the child? Was it the other intervention or was it the social stories? Really, it's probably both, but that's why there's limited studies on actual individual social stories. So as recently as 2015, Payne and his colleagues had determined that function-based social stories as well as functional communication training together did bring forth a considerable decrease in the behavior. So going back to what we had just said, he combined social stories with another intervention and found that it helped reduce the problem behavior. So who are social stories appropriate for? Well, as we have already said, they're widely used for individuals with autism. That's who they were kind of created for. They're also used with verbal individuals. So individuals that we can talk to about the situations, that we can ask them questions about the social story, and they can give us answers that we can see that they're understanding the social story. And they're usually aged anywhere from 4 years old to adult. There's not really a specific age range. And then also many educators do use social stories for their problem behaviors in the classroom. So there are many steps to implement social stories and how to write them. We want to make sure that we are describing the setting in very simple terms, make sure that we're using simple language. We want to make sure that the story needs to describe more of what's going on than directing them of what to do. We also want to make sure that we are writing the story from either a first or a third person perspective. Make sure that you're using Gray's descriptive framework for writing the story. So she had a specific ratio that she used in which she said that you want to use 2 to 5 descriptive sentences for every directive sentence. So this means that you want to be describing the situation much more than you are telling the individual what to do. It's very important. You also want to make sure that you are naming the people, that you give the order of events, and that you let the individual know why things are occurring in that setting and what the appropriate response would be. The whole point of social stories is to tell the individual what they should be doing when they're in that situation. So this right here is a video that I'm going to show you. As you know, we will be implementing our social stories along with a program called the FaceAid program at our school. So the FaceAid program is a computer program, and it's games that the children play in order to learn social cues like eye gaze and things like that. And they will be practicing this after they read their social story. This video is just very short.
Please do look fun. Can you please click on the one I'm looking at? Thank you. That's just what I wanted.
So that's just a very short game of the social story, or of the FaceAid program. There's a lot of different types of games that the children will be playing along with a particular game in order to learn the different eye gazes and social cues as well. So how do we implement social stories? Well, we do want to make sure that we are writing them after either a functional behavior assessment has been conducted or a functional analysis has been conducted. And the reason why is because we need to know the function of the behavior in order to write an effective social story. So studies have proven that if we know the function of the behavior, we will effectively be able to write a good social story that will help reduce the problem behavior of the child. We also want to make sure that we are keeping our story very individual and personal per child. For the most part, no two social stories are going to be alike. We don't want to use one general social story for everybody. A lot of them may be alike in certain situations, but they should be written for that individual so that that individual can see themselves in that situation and put it into their perspective. So as I said before, the students are going to read their social story at their desks at our school and then answer questions about it either through fill in the blank or verbally. And those social stories will be in their binders. After reading those social stories in their binders, then they will go to the computers and use the FaceAid program to practice their social skills. So I'm going to show you some modeling of social stories. This first one is a video called Be Like Buddy, and you can make social stories in many different ways. This one is a great video, so I will show you that.
I can see that you're angry. Your eyebrows are scrunched up. Your mouth is closed tight. Your breathing is really fast, and you're about to do something against the rules. Buddy, feeling angry is okay when things go wrong, but we have to stay safe, follow the rules to make things better. So this is how we're going to do it. First, take 3 slow breaths. Good job, buddy. Next, open your hands. Now you've earned your second star. Now keep your hands safe on the table or at your legs. Okay. Thank you for keeping your hands safe. You did such a great job. You earned another star. Now there's only one more thing we need to do. Now you can say this out loud or show me that pet card. I am calm and I need help.
I am calm and I need help.
Okay, so that's also a really great social story. The only thing that I would say about that social story is that if you notice, it was mostly directive sentences. So as I said before, we want to make sure that we are using more descriptive sentences than directive directive sentences. So next, I'm going to read to you a story that I wrote for the purposes of this presentation. This is just an example of the social story for someone who's going to the dentist. So it's called Going to the Dentist. Everybody needs to see the dentist. The dentist makes your teeth shiny and white. The dentist also helps prevent and help toothaches. My mom and dad will take me to see the dentist every 6 months. When I go, I will first check in at the front desk. Then I will sit in the waiting room before the dentist is ready for me. I can play on the phone, I can read books, or I can watch TV while I am waiting. I cannot run around the waiting room. This will make my mom or dad upset, and I could hurt myself. For me, I will hear my name being called. I will follow the dentist to the room. When I get there, I will sit in the dentist chair. When I sit in the dentist chair, the dentist will ask me to open up my mouth wide so that they can look at my teeth. It's okay to be scared when this happens. If I am scared, I can say, I'm scared, or please give me a moment or minute. The dentist will gently look inside my mouth and they will clean my teeth. This doesn't hurt. After I let the dentist clean my mouth and check inside my mouth, I will get a prize from their toy box. Going to the dentist is no big deal. I can do it. So that was an example of the social story. So how do we determine if a social story is successful? Well, as I said before, we want to make sure that we are using it after performing a functional behavior analysis or assessment so that the social story is more useful to the individual because we're using the function of their behavior. We can test to see if they're understanding the social story by asking them questions, either filling in the blank or verbally when they're practicing the social story. And when they give you the correct answer, you know that they're understanding the social story. Overall, we know that social stories are effective when they reduce their problem behavior. So quick overview, we're going to be using the social story strategy in combination with the FACE-SAVE program, and it's going to help the students to learn to engage in contingent responses to an interaction or conversation. They're going to be able to do appropriate social engagement with adults and peers. They're going to be able to do have attempts or bids for attention, such as gaining eye contact, like the FACE-SAVE program, greet and wave. They're also going to be making comments, hopefully, about a given situation or making requests like, hey, can I have a turn, or can I have some milk? Things like that. The FACE-SAVE program is going to also help the students identify different facial expressions and emotions that are connected to social engagement. So some final tips about social stories. Well, we want to remember that there are several different types of sentences using the social stories. They are descriptive, perspective, directive, control divide, affirmative emphasizes, cooperative describes, and partial fill in the blank. And you do want to remember that you should use more descriptive sentences than directive sentences. Remember, for 3 to 5 descriptive sentences, 1 directive sentence. Then you also want to make sure that you're remembering to write the social story based on the function of the behavior. And always make sure that you're keeping the functional behavior. Always make sure that you're keeping the social story personable and individualized per student. Make sure that it's not a generalized story, that the student can put that story in their own perspective. And that's all I have today for social stories. This next slide here is some of the references that we used within our PowerPoint slides here. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned a lot about our social stories.